Hello friends, welcome back. I am Jason. I stockpile oil, used cooking oil for my truck because that's what it runs on. It runs on diesel fuel and used cooking oil. And I think it's a good idea to have a surplus of fuel set aside just in case one day you want to go out to the gas station and services are no longer available for whatever reason. Supply chains have shut down. Who knows what could cause something very minor could cause that to happen. There's definitely been fuel shortages in the past, and there's undoubtedly going to be fuel shortages in the future. Now, my question for you is stockpiling fuel a short-term solution to a potentially long-term problem? Is it a worthwhile venture to stockpile fuel that doesn't last forever? Even this used vegetable oil doesn't last forever. It's got a shelf life. So we've got to take that into consideration. And once you start this process, you got to constantly keep it going. You can't just set 5 gallons of gas on the shelf. Even with stable and all that kind of stuff in it, eventually it's going to go bad. So you've always got to be rotating your stock. Should we be investing in alternative fuel sources? Like these days, everybody's talking about everything, electric cars, electric bikes, everything. It's getting out of control. But that energy has to come from somewhere. And the batteries on those, for example, have to be replaced periodically. They don't last forever. So do we stockpile batteries too? Can you even stockpile the batteries? I don't know if that's a thing to some degree. I mean, obviously you can put tenders on them and maintain them, but eventually those need to be replaced as well. So is an electric option a viable option? Should I be investing my time and energy into alternative fuel sources, or should we be considering alternative modes of transportation, such as more old school methods, as horses and carts and buggies and all those types of things? Is that something that we should be doing? Should we just be getting in better shape and having a good pair of leather shoes? And like I was saying before, is stockpiling fuel just a short-term solution to a potentially very long-term problem? I mean, I don't know. I mean, these days, who knows what's going to go on in the world? It just seems like it's getting crazier and crazier by the minute. And we just don't know what to expect. And it's always better to be prepared for something that may not happen as opposed to being unprepared for, the thing that does happen. So, I don't know, stockpiling fuel, like for example, if I was to have fuel and hundreds of gallons of fuel and my truck's still running, and the entire neighborhood, the entire town is without fuel, and I'm out driving around, bebopping around in my truck, having a great time, and still trying to attempt to live life as usual, does that make me a big, huge target? Probably. I could see people being very envious of that situation, very jealous of that situation, just like the diesel, or not the diesel, but just like the generators, right? If everybody's without power for weeks on end and they hear this hum of your generator in the distance and they see the lights on in your house. Yes, I know all the light discipline and all the things. I get that, but still, people will eventually catch on that you've got electricity and they don't. So these are things that need to be considered. So again, is it a worthwhile deal to stockpile fuel? Maybe as I'm thinking about this out loud, in short or in small batches, perhaps having huge giant stockpiles like what I've got going on. I've got probably 700 gallons of vegetable oil, give or take, maybe 800 gallons. Is that a valuable resource? And I guess for that matter, is stockpiling anything in huge quantities really that good of an idea? I don't know. I definitely am not sitting on a mountain of food or any kind of supplies like that. That's not something that I've got going on. I feel like I'm probably a little bit more prepared than the average Joe, but definitely not the most. I don't have decades worth of rice and beans sitting around. That's for sure. I mean, again, if you're the neighbor that's well fed and fat and happy and looking healthy, and you got your scrawny little neighbor next to you and watching you, seeing you being well fed, he's going to wonder where that's coming from. Does that again make you a target? I don't know. Is having huge stockpiles of food a risky thing? One, you got to have a place to store it. You got to have a way to keep it fresh for long periods of time, which is not always that simple. This place to store it is a big one for a lot of people, especially if you live in more urban areas. That can be pretty tricky to any amount of any larger volumes, that is. Anybody can put aside a month's worth of food in pretty much any space, any closet, but years supply, that's something different. So does having this huge stockpile of food make you a target? I think we should probably be more interested in and more invested in figuring out ways to produce our own foods. I think that is a much more worthwhile investment. Unless, of course, your primary plan is to set up shop after the apocalypse happens and develop yourself some sort of bartering thrift shop where you can exchange goods and services at your place of business. I think maybe that might be a solution for some people, but we'll see. It's going to come down in the end to your own personal disaster plan. It's going to come down to what makes the most sense for you and your family. Everybody's situation is different, and everybody watching this video is going to have a different plan. Some of you are going to be like, oh, anything less than 10 years of food is a complete waste of time and you're going to die of starvation. Maybe, maybe that's true. Maybe that's not. And other people are going to say, quit worrying about all this stuff. We're going to be fine. The world's not coming to an end. Just relax. You don't need anything. So there's both ends of the spectrum, and it's pretty vast. And the differing opinions out there are endless. So it just comes down to what works the best for you and your family. What's the smart decision for you? And don't let anybody convince you otherwise. I mean, obviously you should pay attention to what's going on around you, and you should reach out for advice, and you should learn from other people that maybe have things further along than you, have a better plan than you, and you should weigh out your options. But what works the best for you works the best for you. And I don't think that you should, always be so concerned about what everybody else is doing. There's always going to be trends in the preparedness world, just like everything else. So what's the most fashionable right now? Years ago, nobody carried around tourniquets and IFAKs and all that stuff. And now, if you don't carry one in the prepper community, people think you're like, this guy clearly doesn't know what he's doing. He's an idiot, right? But, 10, 15 years ago, that wasn't a thing. People didn't do that. And now it is. And things are going to change. Things are going to evolve, just like every other, just like fashion, right? Which, speaking of fashion, I think I got that dialed in. But I think that things are always going to be changing. Things are always going to be evolving, and it's up to you to make the best plan for you and your family. These days, with what's going on overseas right now, everybody's talking about World War III and how to be the best prepared for that. And, how can you prepare for something like that? What's it going to look like here in the United States? It's really hard to say. And there's the argument out there that I've heard quite a few times is that, our ancestors, the people that lived through World War I and World War II were an entirely different breed of human. And they were cut from a different cloth, and they were much more hardy, much more capable, more knowledge, more experienced, and could fend for themselves much easier than today's current population. And I would tend to agree with that. And I would tend to agree with those people that say that, because looking at today's world, today's people, speaking in generalities here, and obviously this doesn't apply to everybody. I think a lot of us are not nearly as prepared, and that goes for me as well. I'm not saying that I am, I've got it all figured out. I definitely don't, especially when it comes to food production. I'm just in the experimental stage at the moment. I didn't grow up farming really, other than small gardens and stuff like that. So it's something that I'm learning, and I want to increase my survivability and my family's survivability by learning these older skills and be a producer as opposed to just a consumer. And I think that's what makes up the majority of our population here in the US is consumers. There's a very, very, very small percentage of people that produce the food. Huge percentage of the population that consumes it only. There was a much, much larger percentage of Americans that had their own gardens, had their own chickens, had their own livestock, was able to produce their own food, and the percentage of Americans that was capable of doing that back in World War II was much, much higher than it is right now. So that's definitely a thing. And there will be a steep learning curve, and there will be a lot of suffering if, you know, it comes down to the point where people have to produce their own food if they want to eat. All right, guys, well, I'm out of here. I appreciate you watching very, very much. Please hit the thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't done so already. And tell me in the comments section, is stockpiling a good idea? Is stockpiling goods of any kind in large, large quantities a long-term solution? Or is it a short-term solution to potentially long-term problems? Does it make you a target? Is it a bad idea? Love to hear what you think. See you guys. I'm Jason Salyer with Survival Dispatch. As a Survival Dispatch insider, you'll be able to gain the knowledge, the skills, and equipment necessary to protect your family when it really, really matters. They'll provide crucial information on such things as stockpiling food, medical necessities, communication plans. You will receive specific, actionable plans. You can deliver proven techniques to help you get home, shelter in place, or bug out safe.